Hi, and welcome to the fourth month of the Stellar Stars Block of the Month quilt. This month we are going to make this little beauty. It is a Mississippi star, and I just love the Mississippi star block so much that I kind of kept it as pure as it comes. I just changed the colors and made them my own, and I'm really excited to share this block with you because we are going to dive into the skill of foundation piecing. Some people also call it, or it's also known as paper piecing. We are going to practice some different skills for foundation piecing, and I'm also going to show you how I glue based for foundation piecing to make alignment and fabric placement a lot more accurate and easier. And we are going to practice piecing to a foundation paper, and I will talk all sorts about that in just a little bit. So the Mississippi Star is our main block for month 4. There is also a sweet little Ohio star for this month, and this month is the month that we are going to start making our Flying Geese sashings that are scattered all throughout the quilt. They frame each of the quadrants of the block to really give it a balanced and cohesive look, and to give it some fun movement throughout the quilt. So these are also going to be done this month. There's 2 ways to make these. We can foundation piece them, or you can piece them traditionally, and that would be with individual Flying Geese blocks. So we are going to just dig right in and get started with talking about our fabrics and the Mississippi Star block. The Ohio Star has been covered in the video for month 1. So for this, you'll just use the color indicated in your pattern, which you will be receiving if you have signed up. So let's talk about that real quick. I have been receiving such great feedback about these videos, and I really appreciate it, you guys. It really helps me to stay motivated, and it helps me to know that what I'm doing is kind of something worthwhile for those of you who are watching the videos, even if you're not following along with the or making this quilt. If you do want to make this quilt, you're more than welcome to join anytime. You can find the pattern on my website, and it's a one-time fee. You can sign up anytime. You'll get all of the patterns for the previous months, plus you'll get the future patterns each month on the 16th. We also have subscription clubs that include fabric and thread, and we'll go over that next. So let's talk about fabric, this month's fabric. If you are getting our fabric bundles in one of our subscriptions, which you can find on our website or on my website, this month is all yellows and grays because, as you can see, the block is yellows and grays. So you'll get 3 yellows, a yellow number 1, which is the darkest, number 2, and number 3, which is the lightest. And then you're going to get 4 grays. There are only 2 grays used in this block, but the rest of them are for those Flying Geese sashings that I showed you just a second ago. So the reason you're getting 4, normally these bundles only come with 6 colors plus the background fabric, so a total of 7. I tossed in a fat 1/8 of this color here, which is gray number 2, and it's used only in this block, as well as the accent block everybody's going to learn in the upcoming month. So you only need about a fat 1/8. You'll actually have some left over, so it's a little bonus color. Otherwise, you get 3 fat quarters of the yellows, 3 fat quarters of the other grays, plus the fat quarter of the white. Also for the Flying Geese, we are going to use one of the grays that was in month 3. And our threads, this is our thread set that comes with the fabric bundle subscription option. It also is an option all by itself, and it comes with threads that you can use for on your machine. You can use them for hand embroidery. And at the end, or toward the end, we are going to have hand embroidery designs for each individual block, and some of these threads will be used for those designs. The designs can also be used for machine or hand quilting marking and inspiration. So this month there is a white SWA, it's silk, ooh, see, it's much whiter now. White SWA 103, which is about a 50 weight thread. There's also the Surfine 2405. I'll be using this for most of my piecing. And there is another 103 in a yellow, and another 103 in a really lovely gray, and then a perlé, which is comparable to a cotton pearl 6-ish. And then there is one of my favorites, the Soie de Paris, which is a 6-strand embroidery floss, and it is to die for to work with. I absolutely love it. And finally, a skein of Dalgé, which is a 7-strand floss. The difference between these two, the Dalgé is a spun thread, so they pick up all the little bits and pieces, spin them together, and make the thread. The Soie de Paris is a filament thread, so it is directly from the silk source, from the worm itself. So let's take a peek at the patterns now that we've kind of gone over the thread. This is the cover for the pattern you'll get for the Mississippi Star. Gives you all the color options. If you're not doing the Fabric Club, it just breaks down what value you'll need for each of the colors. And you get a little planning sheet as well if you aren't using our colors and you want to use something completely different. And on this, I want to point out our cutting diagrams here are given for using foundation piecing, also for foundation piecing and regular piecing. This will all make sense as we get working in our on our block. You will also get the templates for making your blocks. I am providing cutting templates for the foundation piecing, / paper piecing. That way it just helps you get more accurate cuts and accurate placement for your foundation piecing. And then we are going to talk about using foundation paper for our piecing. So I have already printed, and these are part of the pattern, so you will need these if you're going to make the block. These I am going to sew to. So if you have some experience with paper piecing or foundation piecing, something like this will look really familiar to you. We will rough cut it out, and you actually sew to the back. Now with normal, typical paper piecing, you have to tear all those papers out of the back. But with this foundation, and I will put a little link right down here for you, it can stay in, and when the quilt gets washed and worn and cuddled and loved, it just blends right into the batting. This is the lightweight version of the applique foundation that we used last month. So it is a really great product to use for foundation piecing. It comes in yardage. I do sell it in my shop. You do have to cut it to size to go into your printer, but print it on an inkjet printer, not a laser. No, 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 no. So print it on an inkjet printer, and then you can use it for foundation piecing. It stays in, becomes super soft. It just dissolves. You can quilt through it. It's really a wonderful product to use. Saves a ton of time because you don't have to tear it out. You'll need 4 of those to make one full block. And then I've also provided the piecing templates for the Flying Geese sashings too. So this is the foundation paper. This is the lightweight, and I've already cut these to size. Using the pattern that you'll get, you will print the pages you'll need just right onto the paper. If you don't want to use this paper, do use a lower weight of paper. So paper comes in pounds, so you want to use something that is lighter. If you have a paper piecing type paper, there's Carol Doak, Deb Krasik are a couple of people who sell really lovely, wonderful paper piecing papers. I don't carry theirs, but they have them on their websites, and I will provide a link for those as well. So my method that I'm doing this month can be used with any paper or foundation that you want to use. The biggest difference comes in the finish. in that I don't have to tear it out. So for example, this is it. This is my draft pattern, so it doesn't have all the numbers and labels on it, but it just is going to stay in forever. And it's going to be lovely and wonderful and soft, and I think you'll really like it. And I hope you'll give it a try. If you, of course, use what you like. So the other supplies that you will need this month are our washable basting glue. I use the Elmer's washable school glue. You'll need a washable school glue stick. I'm going to be using this one today. We're just going to use this for tacking. You'll need a ruler, your rotary cutter. You'll also need machine embroidery needles. The Schmetz 7511s are my favorites. And you'll also need your spray starch and just other little supplies that you want to use. So let's go ahead and get started with getting our fabrics prepared. The fabrics you're going to need are the 3 yellows of your choice. You'll need gray number 2, and you will need gray number 4. So let's talk about the gray numbers really quick. And then number 3 was in the previous month, so that would have squeezed right in here. And so next up is number 4, 5, and the lightest is 6. In general, the colors for all of the subscription bundles are dark to light, with number 1 being the darkest and number 6 being the lightest. Gray number 1 has not been provided yet. That will be in 2 more months. It is used in month number 6 in the block for that, so that will be the last gray that you get, and it's only used in that block. Do ask me any questions you might have about these colors, and we're going to go ahead and get started. You'll need your gray number 2, and you'll need gray number 4. So gray number 4 being lighter than gray number 2. And we're going to also need our background fabric. And next up, we'll get cutting these apart. I'll show you how I use the cutting templates, and we'll get going. The first thing to do to get started with the Mississippi Star Block is have your fabrics ready for cutting and print your templates. So we will be using the paper foundation cutting templates that are in your pattern, and you'll just need to print one of each of the 2 pages that it comes with. These are going to help us cut our fabric pieces so that placement is much easier, and we get a little bit more accurate as well. The seam allowances are larger than just piecing. So if you haven't done foundation piecing before, the biggest starting tip I have is always cut the pieces that you're going to be piecing bigger than you need, because it's much easier to trim your fabric than to wish that you had more. So we will be trimming down the seam allowances. The seam allowance excess on these is 3/8 of an inch, where when we piece them we do 1/4 of an inch. So this gives you some wiggle room. You don't have to be super extremely accurate with your piecing, and then it'll all get trimmed up in the end. So we'll be using those, and you'll also need 4 of the foundation paper piecing template, because our block has 4 quadrants. So each of the templates here is 1 quadrant. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll need 4 of those to pull it all together to make one big block. So let's walk through where the colors all will be placed. Color number 1, the darkest, are these 4 sections of the center star. Color number 2 are the other 4 sections. We've got background fabric on the inside. Feel free to change up these colors also. And we have the lightest as the band out here. And then we have gray number 2, which is the darker, on opposite ends here, and gray number 4 on opposite ends here, and then our background fabric filling in the rest. So the first thing is to get our fabrics cut up. For foundation piecing, if you want to lightly start your fabric just to get some excess wrinkles out, go for it, and you'll be ready to cut those up. So to use our cutting templates with our fabrics, we're going to rough cut these out of the paper. They don't have to be super duper extremely accurate and precise. And in fact, if you wanted to, you can stack and cut, which is what I'm going to show you. You can stack and cut multiple pieces, and because we are going to be trimming these up, if anything shifts, it's perfectly fine. Now, if you are a template person, you can cut these out and glue them with a glue stick or other adhesive to template plastic, and then you'll have a plastic template for cutting your pieces, especially if you want to make more than just this one block. So let's take a look at these templates. Each piece number is listed on the template, so you'll know which one they are. These are meant to be used with your fabric from the right side up. In the paper piecing or foundation piecing template, it's the mirror image because we are sewing to the back side. Don't worry if that doesn't quite make sense yet. So let's start one thing at a time. We're going to go ahead and cut these apart. And I've also put the colors on there to help you keep them straight. And I'm just going to rough cut these apart. And then set them aside as I go. Okay, they are all cut apart and ready to use on our fabrics. So a couple of things about the templates. Each template has this arrow on it, because once you cut it apart, it's hard to tell how it's supposed to be aligned, and it's really easy to get them off grain. So this arrow here is your grain line, and it should be aligned along a straight grain. Also, when you're printing these, just to reiterate, make sure you print at 100%, no scaling. We want to make sure that these turn out to be the size that we want them to be. So go ahead and start with any of the colors you want. I have my darkest yellow on top, so I am going to cut that one first. The template tells me how many I need, so it says cut 4 from yellow number 1 or dark yellow. And what you can do if you want to is you can cut more than one at a time, but I want to point something out about this specific piece. Let's scooch on over. This specific piece is not symmetrical. So if I were going to use a print like something like this and try and cut 2 at a time, you can see that I will actually make a right and a left. So in order to cut more than one piece at a time, when you have a non-symmetrical piece like this, you would need to cut strips. To cut a strip, you could place your piece so that the straight grain is aligned either direction. It really doesn't matter. Sometimes it has to do with the design. So as long as that's on a straight grain, and cut a strip that's just a tad wider, and then stack that on top of another strip, and then from the front for these pieces, then you could cut multiple pieces at a time. So that's just a little tidbit for you. Now, if you're using the hand-dyed fabrics or a solid, it doesn't matter. There's no right side or wrong side. So you can cut more than one piece at a time. And if you want to use your ruler to get more accurate cutting, you certainly can. I'm just going to kind of cut around it, rough cut. So it doesn't have to be exact. Just make sure you don't cut it too small. And hold it in place. And then I've got 2 pieces here ready to go. And now those extra papers are gone. And so I've got 2, and then you can flip it over, keeping it on grain. You can nest it in there and get utilize your fabric really nicely as well, so you have less waste. So just cut around. You'll need 4 of each. And once you get your 4, keep them with the template, clip them together with a little wonder clip or something that just helps you keep them organized. And those are ready for piecing. We'll repeat that process for each piece for the entire block, keeping in mind to look at the templates and see how many it tells you to cut. Then just keep them organized in your stack so that they will be ready to piece. So I will go ahead, I'll keep cutting these. I'm going to just put it on for your viewing pleasure so you can watch as I cut these apart. Okay, I am on piece number 6A, so which is out of the light yellow. And this piece is a diagonal piece. So let's take a look at it in the block. In the block, it goes diagonal on a 45-degree angle on each of the 4 quadrants. So the one thing we should not do, please, 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 oh please, don't align it on your fabric like this. That will make these edges, which actually go to the outside of the block, be on a bias, which will make it stretchy. So we want to keep the straight grain on the outside of the block. So follow this arrow to keep your fabric on grain, on one of the straight grains. And you can cut 2 at a time if you're using solids or hand dyes. Actually, you could cut 2 at a time just by folding a print as well, because this is a symmetrical piece. For example, it's like when I used to teach my elementary school kids. If you fold this in half on one of its lines of symmetry, so line of symmetry being a vertical or horizontal or diagonal, its line of symmetry is this. So when I fold it in half, it's exactly the same. So if I did place it on a print, I would get 2 pieces that I could actually use. I won't have a right and a left. So that is a nice thing about this piece, is you don't have to worry about that at all. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 here. So I've got 2 cut, and I'll put that over here, and I'll flip my template around. Now you can do this, certainly. I just kind of prefer to do that. And I'll nest it in there, it gives me less waste. And then cut around again and get the 2. See, I just love using cutting templates when I can, because it also helps keep me familiar of the pattern shape, the shape of the piece as I'm working, and helps me make sure I get those pieces when I'm going to sew them in placed in much more easily. It's so easy to put them backwards. So I've got 4 of those. We'll keep those all together. So all of my yellows are cut now. The gray templates just say gray. On inside of the allowance, it tells you to cut 2 from gray number 2 and 2 from gray number 4 for template 2A and 3A. Now, if you look at them, they're pretty much the same piece. They just go on opposite sides. They end up being like this on the pattern. So one goes up and one goes that way. I've made them 2 separate templates just to help you keep things organized. But because they are also symmetrical, see, its line of symmetry is this way, you can also use a print and not have to cut strips. You can just cut 2. So I'll cut 1 template here. to. And then move all the scraps out of the way. And then I've got both of 2A and 3A. So I'm going to reuse these templates to cut my gray number 4. Alright, so for gray number 4, it's all folded and ready to go. Keeping my arrow on a straight grain, we'll cut around the template. So have number 2A done, and we'll get number 3A, and repeat the same thing. I've got 2A and 3A in gray number 4 and gray number 2, and keep those separated. These are all of the templates for our background fabrics. In the layout, the cutting layout on the pattern, I give you suggestions for how to get the most out of your fabric. So you need 4 of these. They're just 4 squares, so they're symmetrical on all lines of symmetry. So you could certainly fold your fabric even into 4ths, as long as it's big enough for the square. And hopefully it is. That would be great. So, yep, I've got a little bit right there that's going to be slightly short, but again, these pieces are larger than they need to be, so I've got some wiggle room. I'm not going to worry about it. And the templates are great for using scraps, because then you don't have to guess at what size your piece needs to be. The template will do that for you. Okay, so I have all 4 of these ready to go. When you're cutting the background for piece number 4A, the template that I showed in the video is wrong. The template in the pattern is correct. This is not the grain line. If we had aligned the straight grain on this line, that would actually make this portion, which is, see, this piece is this piece, that would make this, which needs to go on the outside of the block, on the bias, which would make it very stretchy and difficult to work with because it would ripple and cause issues. We need this edge to be aligned on the grain, not this one. So the templates in the pattern are correct. It changes the way that you cut it a little bit. So instead of laying your piece onto your fabric like this, so that the previous arrow was on a straight grain, we actually need to align it like this to make this arrow on a straight grain. So you can align it this direction or this direction, and I have corrected the pattern to reflect this being the grain. So the same thing when cutting the templates for the foundation piecing, you'll cut around and just making sure to align this on the straight grain, and then your pieces will work just fine. B and 1C, these are a funky angle, so keep in mind to use that grain line there, and it probably is going to be easier to nest these with having a single layer of fabric. So you can have them go up and down like this on your grain, and you'll have much more fabric to work with because I didn't have a full fat quarter here. Or like this, or like this. Just as long as your grain is straight. That's all that matters. But the suggestion I gave in the pattern might help too. And then you can flip the template around and nest it and get it down here or up here. I think up here it fits pretty nicely. All right, everything here is ready for piecing into our block. So let's lay these out so you kind of get a visual of how it's all going to come together. So let's start with this diagonal piece here. And it's going to go right here. Okay, remember seam allowances are on these, so it's going to look gigantic right now. And then one of your grays, it doesn't matter which one right now because we're not actually piecing them together. So it can go like that. And then your other gray is going to go like this. And then that other white 4A, don't worry if these aren't put in the exact spot. We're right now just placing them just to make sure we have all our pieces that go where they are supposed to go. And then that one goes there. And then that piece will go there. This one goes here. And that one will go right here. And this one will go there. So we've got all of our pieces that are going to come together to make the quadrant right here. So we've got the pieces there, all of them coming together to make our quadrant. So the next thing we'll do is start sewing these to our foundation. I'll walk you through my little tips and tricks for foundation paper piecing and glue basting and matching up to get accuracy, even if you don't have a light table or other sources for lining up our seams, and trimming and all that fun stuff to get these put together to make our fantastic Mississippi star block.